Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today is a video that we're going to talk about the supplies that I use for my art. This is going to be a kind of a mix of different things that I use. We're going to just start with not the pens or the pencils that I use. Actually, we're going to start with the paper. Yeah, the main paper that I use for all of my stuff is this Canson mixed media paper. It's 98 pound weight, so it's like somewhat heavy. This is just one of the sketchbooks that I use, but this paper is really good for pretty much anything. It's mainly like a heavier paper, so since I work with markers, I like to make sure that the paper that I have is heavy enough that it doesn't bleed through. For now, I use not only just the 7x10 for like portraits, I also use this Canson mixed media 9x12 paper, which is the same weight. It's just a bigger paper. And then I have just a normal sketchbook. This is just a blue one. I call it the Big Blue Book. You could use it to journal. I have my old sketchbooks that I'll probably make a video on at another point, going through my older college sketchbooks. But this is just a hardbound sketchbook because these things, you know, the paper will bleed. Like this is the drawing I've done back in like 2 years ago. But it will bleed and it will get onto your other paper here. So this is less for doing finished pieces and more for, you know, like I put all my business cards for other companies that I find in here and like other artists that I've worked with in the past. When it comes to drawing materials, things that I use to draw, I basically live and die by the Ticonderoga yellow like pencil for all of my traditional drawings. I burn through erasers like nobody's business, so it's always good to have like a big white vinyl eraser. These things are great because they just erase a lot at a time. And then for more minor stuff, I use a Staedtler eraser pencil. So it's a retractable eraser. Push it out like a mechanical pencil, and it's more or less just a pencil eraser, except instead of it being on a pencil, it's just its own eraser. So, you know, you can just erase that way. I recently picked up these two, Factus brand. It's a soft oval eraser and then like a hard tacky eraser. I got these because my work, my art, I push really hard when I draw, and my paper is, some of the paper that I use except for the watercolor paper is soft. Like 98 pound paper's all right, but it might bleed through a little bit. But like watercolor paper pretty much won't bleed through with marker because it's made for watercolor. But apparently these erasers are supposed to be good for getting out deep graphite marks and getting rid of those deep lines when drawing on the paper like that. But when it comes to inking and coloring, I have just an absolute mess of different things to go through. So to start, the most recent brush that I've been using a lot, that I've fallen in love with, is this Tombow brand brush pen. It's this one's the hard tip. They have a hard tip and a soft tip, and I like the hard tip the most because it's really nice. It's not like a brush, it's kind of like a stiff pen tip. It glides so nice, it does so well. I use it a lot for my drawing because it just gives smooth lines and it doesn't fade as bad as the Microns do. The Micron pens tend to fade when erasing, but you know, I have like a plethora of Microns, and for a while I was using the Micron 5, which its tip is, you know, fairly small, but it's good for like varying line weights. So when it comes to signing my pieces, you'll probably have seen in the bottom right corner of most of my pieces I have the gold signature. It's just a Faber-Castell 1.5 gold pen. Okay, this is the soft tip Tombow marker, and it's not any different. I just found the hard tip was a little more fun. When it comes to coloring, I have so many different ways that I use to color. My main source is these pens that I got as a gift for Christmas a couple years ago. Shuttle Art is the brand of this marker. These are alcohol-based markers. They're fine. I think it was 204 plus a blender pen. I think it's like $70 on their website, but they're just a fine tip pen on one side and then a broad tip pen on the other. But I get asked at shows and, you know, places that I go to all the time, they go, are those Copic markers? Is that Copic? No, these are not Copic. These are just some random pens that I was given as a gift for Christmas, and you know, there's so many of them that I never ever have to buy a pen again. This is one. Let me zoom out here. This is one set of all of my pens. The rest of them are off the scene here. But I got these little marker holder things at Michael's, and they are literally the perfect size for these guys. This is not the brand of the marker that goes with them. This is just like an Artist Loft like pen holder. These are good pens, good like entry-level pens. I mean, they will probably dry out pretty fast if you don't have the cap on them or don't treat them well, but if you can, they work and blend just as good as a Copic marker. I would highly recommend these if you're just starting out, because I mean, for the price, you get 200 pens for like $70. You know, that's pretty good. On top, speaking of Copics, I also own Copic markers. They were either handed down to me or I just bought a couple because I wanted to try using them. They come in Copic Sketch, and then there's Copic Chow. And Copic Chows are smaller, but they are cheaper. They hold less ink because the pen themselves is smaller, but the Copic Sketches are much wider, so they'll hold more ink. They just cost a little bit more. But what you can do is, what I would highly recommend for Copics is that because they are so expensive, what I would recommend is getting like an RGB set, like red, green, blue, maybe black. Black specific. I have so many black Copic pens that it's not even funny, because this is just a color you'll use. You will use black. It's not like oh yeah, you know, like maybe golden yellow. Like, how often am I gonna use golden yellow? Like, you know, you really won't. So recommend getting like maybe 1 or 2 black pens. And then what I would suggest is they come in these 2 different sizes. There's like a big one, and then there's this. These are Copic ink refills. So this is the skin tones that I use. This is E11, which is like the darker shade, and then you have E00, which is the lighter skin shade. And I use skin color tones a lot, so I bought these. It just comes with, it unscrews, and it's a little syringe type thing, and you put it either, you take off of the nub, because with the nubs on the Copics, there's a specialty set of pliers you can get that pull the nub out, and you can also replace them, because over time they will get ruined. Take the nub out, and then you fill the cartridge with this ink. The ink refills, I think, are $8.99, but you get 12 milliliters, sorry. You get 12 milliliters of them, and these pens, you know, I've used this much on a pen that I've had for 2 years. So you don't even use a lot of the ink. Those are very good for colors that you're going to use a lot, like skin tones. Black, red is a color I use a lot, so I have a red one, and I have like a pink one somewhere else. All right, so miscellaneous and kind of like other random pens that I use. 10, let's focus, is a 10 Jelly Roll pen. These are like $2 at like anywhere you go, but I have the 10 because it's a broader color, broader stroke than it is the 5. I've used the 5, and it just not a lot of ink comes out, and I prefer to have a little bit more ink showing to make that more opaque, a more pronounced white. But you know, I have other sorts of like randomly assorted jelly pens as well. I have like a silver one, like this one here. It's like this Stardust colored one. Otherwise, you know, I use Jelly Rolls very sparingly, because again, they take a long time to dry. So I want to be able to get a piece done and, you know, do those finishing touches, let it dry a little bit, and then continue. I have all sorts of other things in here too. I have just different style of microns. There's different colors of microns. There's not just black. So this one is brown and they come in different sizes. This is a 1. A Faber-Castell brush pen for white. I have this as like an emergency, need a white pen. It's not very opaque when you draw with it. So, you know, it's more or less used for light highlighting and not anything like extreme, like highlights and eyes or anything like that. I have this bottle of Copic opaque white. Like it's got a brush that's built into it, so you can use this as a way to do your highlights and stuff, but it does pull up and drip on the end, as you can see here. You kind of don't want that with your pieces, especially if it drips or falls while you're moving. Ink brush pens that I've only ever used a couple times with these, just because they are, this is a learning tool using these ink style brush pens. Like there's ink all over the place on this now. Awesome. And then one last thing would also be Posca markers. These are paint pens. They're acrylic based paint pens. They come in all different sizes. This is the largest one that I have, but they come in like chisel tip ones. They come in these broad tips and they come in a fine one. They're just paint pens. You shake them and they're paint. So good for highlights, and then black for, you know, I also keep these in here for my cons if I need to write a sign that's really large and people need to see it. I'll have this big black Posca marker. Pretty much, I would recommend starting off with a cheaper kit of pens, whether it be the shuttle art pens that I showed here, you know, Artisoft pens from Michaels. I'm using that as an example because that's just like a very easily accessible marker to get, and their pens aren't bad. I've used them before. Blick Art Materials also has their brand of pens, which also aren't bad. I started using those in my earlier years of my work, but I just have these shuttle art markers, and they are just the best thing that I have. Color wise, I mean, some of them fade, some of them are starting to go out. So I think once I eventually get through these 204 markers, I might invest into higher quality stuff. But again, you really don't need high quality markers to be like a good artist, because, you know, I have Copics, but I don't really ever use them. Other than that, that's pretty much it, aside from maybe miscellaneous tools or whatever you might have laying around, like a ruler or something. Like that would also be something you use for straight lines and whatnot. But when it comes to my art, again, the Canson mixed media paper is really nice. I've yet to try the watercolor. I'm going to try it with markers and see how it plays out, and then try it maybe with gouache or, of course, watercolor. But they hold really well. They don't bleed as bad. If you want to put a sheet underneath it, like an excess sheet to kind of absorb that extra ink, you can. And then, you know, just a standard sketchbook, one that is just thin paper you can write ideas and sketches in. And then, of course, you know, my big plethora of pens. But find what works for you. Find what's cheapest. Work with that. And if it's really not working for you, then maybe spend a little, maybe $3 extra for a higher quality pen, and try those out and see if you like it. You really just got to find what you like, and then, you know, go from there. But those are the materials that I use. I'll try to see if I can't put any of the information down below, like where I got these pens and where I can get them from, and then see if you guys can pick up some as well. But thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.